Just to know, on the first set of minutes, since I wasn't here, Bill, were you or anybody sure? Because I think 3 of you were here, right? Yep. You guys, okay, good. Okay. All right. I should look. Who did bills this week? Jay, how did I miss you?
Probably me.
Yeah. Okay, let her rip, I guess. Okay, let's bring the Thursday, March 2nd Webster Town Board meeting to order. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dolly, can you do roll?
Supervisor Flaherty.
Here.
Councilman Abbott.
Here.
Councilman Cahill.
Here.
Councilwoman Wynn. Here. Town Attorney Janeski.
Present.
Okay, next up is the open to the floor section of the meeting where each speaker will be allowed up to 5 minutes on the podium to discuss anything he or she would like. I think we have 2 people signed in tonight. Frequent flyers. First in order is the Honorable Ronald Nesbitt, who was the supervisor of the town for 12 years? 14. 12 years on the board prior to that.
Yeah, 24 hours.
24 okay.
Oh, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I have returned again this evening to discuss green energy on the $28 million highway project. A couple of weeks ago, Deputy Supervisor Cataldi said that the design consultants had done studies on green energy, and she would have the studies posted. This is yet to happen, and I would like all studies regarding green energy to be put online so all residents can see how this isn't a good investment for Webster. Supervisor Flaherty last week waved around an informational piece, this one here, and was very proud that the town gave out over 2,000 of these information sheets after residents paid their taxes. But number 7 states clearly, and I quote, "The town will be completing a study for this facility to fully assess the opportunity to utilize green infrastructure on this project." So at this point in time, no green studies have been done on this project, and this town board passed a $28 million bond without looking at green energy. That's a fact, residents. That's a fact. According to Supervisor Flaherty's column this week, it's okay. Because if construction bids come in higher, the town board could just raise the bond higher. Just great news for Webster taxpayers. I also found it concerning that Councilman Cahill and Abbott both mentioned last week the terrible conditions at the present garage that the dedicated highway workers had to work in. But neither councilman seems to be bothered that we are now in the 8 weeks into a new year, and the highway and sewer workers don't have a new union contract passed. Is this town board or the HR directors playing hardball with the union to save money, to pay down the $28 million bond, I ask? These are the same workers you praised last week for going to Buffalo to help out in the snowstorm. So please stay at the negotiating table and get these dedicated workers a new contract. In closing, I would like to remind Supervisor Flaherty that all these talks about grants are only monies Webster residents have paid to New York State on April 15th in some of the highest state taxes in the U.S. of A. It's not free money, and Webster residents are now paying twice for your projects when you take grants. And a good reason why over 300,000 residents have left New York State to avoid these high taxes. And soon will be leaving Webster after they realize how much taxes will be going up in Webster after your $80 million latest spending spree. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. And Ken Corpus is next.
Good evening. So, wanted to talk about the highway garage bond. I watched the video from the previous two meetings, so I know you said that I left before you answered my questions, but I can't speak after that point, so there's really no need to stay. And I'll be leaving again tonight, and I'll be watching the video. The nice part about the video is I can stop it, go back and listen to it again and watch it as many times as I want, so I'll be doing that. But as I mentioned at both board meetings before, several items that have been mentioned on the plan don't have any line items in the budget. The new stormwater treatment facility, my question still has not been answered. Improvements to the main building, my question still has not been answered. A fuel island improvement, that question still hasn't been answered. And then also, you threw in another $888,000 plus over and above what the bond was for, when the bond already has $5 million plus in incidentals and contingencies. And I asked why that was, and there's still no answer. I know you've gone ahead and approved it. It was a unanimous vote. I think I see why now you had to make it such a rushed vote last week. One of you is not here tonight, and you would need all five of you. The first time the budget was introduced was at a town board workshop on September 9th, where people weren't allowed to speak. We then opened it up on the 16th and the 23rd. So there was about 14 days for people to speak before it was out there. I highlighted the fact that there was a statement that the building design was around 30% complete at the time it was released, and then 50% later, and then there was a statement of 60%. And I was told it's because you hadn't picked out the drapes yet. So I think it would have been nice to at least tell me that the structural design of the building was done. Maybe I would have been a little bit more comfortable. And now I've been requested to have a private meeting to go over some of this stuff because you can't speak about it in the public, and I don't understand why. I think taxpayers should know. And there was some discussion about the numbers that I threw out, and whether the numbers were right or wrong is irrelevant. It's either 80,000 or 81 million, 80 million, 85 million, 87 million. Still a lot of money that's being spent. And again, I have an 88-year-old mom living on a fixed income that is probably what I used to make working part-time when I was younger in college. And that's my main concern. And then we talked about house values. There was this concern over the fact that the house values in the assessment is at 64%. Well, I can tell you this right now, my house is valued at $311K with the town, assessed at $212, I think it is. And so I'm way over your $200,000 number. And I have a feeling that there's another piece to that assessment that really wasn't talked about. And I'll wait for your answer and watch it later. You never disclose that this doesn't include the village properties. The village has its own highway department, and they will not be contributing to this bond. That's my assumption. If I'm wrong, please tell me so, but I'm pretty much certain that that's the case. And so there's a number of houses in the village that won't be taxed. That means that the remaining houses in the town will have to pay more per property.
I'm going to break from something on this. I'm not going to cut into your 5 minutes because you still.
Well, maybe
But
just
before
let
you
me
leave,
finish.
while you're up there,
Yeah.
I've written down a bunch of things, and the one that I definitely want, if people are watching or watch the tape, and I want while you're here. Paul, address what he said about the village taxpayers.
Yeah, highway buildings are required to be paid out of the general townwide fund, which doesn't include the village.
Okay, I'm going to start the clock again, so that answers that question.
Well, thank you for answering that.
You
It's
got
the
it.
first time you stopped and answered.
It's
and
the
I
first time that I've
appreciate it.
had the question. Thanks, Kenny.
Then that begs the question, how do the village people feel about this? And so that's a whole nother story. But as I said before, you know, I don't think any of you are doing anything wrong. Please don't think that. And I've never said once to anybody, and I've talked to a lot of people, that the garage is not in need of repair or replacement. I think that's a well-known fact. You can see it. I've been to the garage before. I've seen the videos, I've seen the pictures, I've talked to people that have been there, I've talked to some people that work there. And I don't disagree that it needs work done, but I just feel like this whole process was rushed. It would have been nice to give the town residents 30 days maybe to review it and have some more numbers out there, but it's water under the bridge now, and I understand that, but it's still my right to stand here and talk about it. So I appreciate your time, and
Thanks,
I'll
Ken.
look forward to the video at 11.
I wish it'd stay, but I understand why. I think, unless somebody else, this bean gets me every time, if anybody else has come in, I don't think so. So that's it for that portion. And I just want to say, you know, it's funny, Mr. Nesbitt and Mr. Corpus, they were in last week and took the podium also. And I think Mr. Corpus actually took the podium the week before that. So he's got a hat trick. He's got 3 meetings in a row. And I think you guys have heard me say this before. I appreciate hearing the criticism and questions of the community much more so than getting bestowed praise on us. Because you don't learn much from praise. You'll learn and see if you got to get better as an organization from that criticism. So I really appreciate when Ron and Ken come in. It's unfortunate with 45,000 people in this town that with all the communication that we did on this project, that really only those 2 came in, and then Jason Torres last week, and I think Mary Taylor. Is that her name? I know she has a sewer
Jane.
issue. Huh? Jane Taylor, okay. I know the board will probably kill me for this. I wish that every board meeting had 30 people get up on that podium and give criticism, constructive criticism, questions, this and that. We would learn, we'd be a better community. I don't know. I'm not so, I don't think that we're doing things so perfect that only 2 people are coming in. But that's what we're getting. And we certainly are trying to promote these meetings in about 12 different ways. So I don't know what that means, but anyway, I'll get off my soapbox and get on with the meeting. Bill, can you help me on the next one?
Minutes to be approved for February 16th. I reviewed the minutes and find them acceptable and recommend that we approve them as submitted. Second.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn? Supervisor Flaherty?
Abstain, I was not. And I also reviewed the February 23rd board minutes, and I make a motion to approve those.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn?
Jenny?
I have looked over the bills and I believe everything appears to be in order. I would like to make the motion to pay those bills.
Second.
Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye. And then I went over the prepaid warrants as submitted by Paul Adams, the Director of Finance, and I make a motion to approve those.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
Paul, I know the next 2 are yours. We also, I think, this week for the first time, did we put up on the website or social media 24, 48 hours before the meeting, the purchase order bills and prepaid warrants?
We did. It's the first time. Oversight, I don't know.
You know,
We had never traditionally included them, and there's no reason why we shouldn't.
no, there isn't, but it also, I mean, one of my favorite lines is don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. If there's a story that, hey, you're not putting those things up and you're doing a resolution at a board meeting. This town, from what I've found out in 3+ years as a supervisor, puts out our budget, preliminary budget, final budget, in a transparent manner to the community different from any other town in Monroe County. We put every line item of appropriation in that budget. We used to do it in the Webster Herald, and it was delivered at every house when the newspaper industry was under challenges, and they couldn't do that anymore. We now put it in the Webster Today. No other town does that. But I like that practice. I mean, that is erring on the side of caution to show, it's a little boring, because it's accounting. And being an accountant like you, I never considered putting the purchase orders and prepaid warrants because they're somewhat encapsulated within the budget. And you tell us very quickly if we're going beyond an appropriation line item in the budget.
That's what the transfers are
Right. So, but we talked about it this week, and no harm, no foul. It's easy to put them up there, and I guess if the citizens want to review that, that's usually count sheet, or God bless them, right?
for. Yeah.
So, anyway, I'll hand it to you for the
Yeah.
next two.
So, yeah, the next two are what we think are the final 2022 budget transfers and amendments. On the revenue side, the sale of equipment within the highway townwide was lower than what we expected because they did trade-ins rather than outright sales at auction. And the trade-in basically just reduces the cost on the expense side. Mortgage and sales tax were up. So that was positive. Gave us some funds to cover some of the other revenue items that were below budget. On the expense side, we actually had, so this includes a rather significant increase to the police vehicle line, about $103,000. Basically what happened, the vehicles that were budgeted for 2023 came in December 2022. They came in earlier than expected. So when they're delivered, we incur the expense. So we actually got a double hit in 2022 for police vehicles. So we had to cover that. So that means in 2023, there won't be any expense for police vehicles. So we'll have an excess. Electricity and fuel costs were up. No secret there. Our retirement expense was actually pretty significantly under budget, so it gave us some funds to cover some of the other line items that were short. On the amendment side, they're rather insignificant. Had increased the parking and trust fees, and had increased the electricity line for streetlights, and had increased the park district maintenance line slightly. So, and the rest of them are just housekeeping items, just to clean things up at the end of the year.
Any questions or comments from the board?
The vehicle expense line for the police department in 2023, that was just show no cost incurred, right?
Right. 23 will show no cost.
I make a motion to approve the final 2022 budget transfers.
Second?
Supervisor Fleury?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wood?
Aye.
And I make a motion to approve the final 2022 budget amendments.
Second?
Supervisor Fleury?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wood?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
All right, before we move to Arthur Joan on this next one, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Paul, but consistent with what I've seen, I walked into 3 years ago a budget philosophy of the leadership of this town that is conservative. Be conservative at budgeting your expenses, be conservative on budgeting your revenues. And this town historically has done better on actuals than on budgets.
Yeah.
I know that the auditors are in, we won't have the report till April, but preliminary results for '22 show that we have continued that trend. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
the internal financials done, which is pretty close to what the auditors will end up with. And once again, the trend continued.
Yeah.
Thanks to record sales tax, mortgage tax was still over budget. Some of the expense items were under budget, just did not occur in the town. So, right, return surpluses in most of the funds. The sewer fund we did not. Take us around a deficit of around
Sure.
400,000.
But I mean, and I've said it before, I think, for a town board member, I think it's arguably your most important job is a fiduciary responsibility. You are the guardian of the taxpayers' money. One thing is to have your lips flap about that. I think historically we've shown that we've done that. I thank you, Paul, for the fund balance policy a year or two ago, because that once again will guide us as we move into, believe it or not, only a couple months we'll start the 24 budget process. Never ends. Art.
Yes. So what we're going to talk about tonight is really the codifying of a policy that's been in place for many years here in town. It is policy and procedure for sewer improvements for existing neighborhoods. This does not include new developments and so forth. So we just cleaned up some verbiage and clarified a few things, and that's what we're going to hopefully make it a policy.
Well, I read through it. I don't have any questions. I think it spells everything out quite well.
Bill?
I'm fine with it.
Jen? All right. So I make a motion to approve the Town of Webster policy summary for construction of sewer improvements to bring service to improved properties within the consolidated sewer district.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Miller?
Aye.
Steve,
You're up.
I feel so guilty keeping you here till 10 to 8.
Yeah, good.
Well, Penny was here
My
at
longest is
7:30.
32 hours, so this is nothing.
Well, you know, I know you want to be out ice fishing, but you would have drowned.
Yeah, there's no ice, so. I put all my stuff away last weekend, so getting ready for turkey season now.
Sure. You want to jump up at the podium or at the microphone to just explain, and whatever the next two resolutions kind of fall right into yours, and I know you and John Camille and Andy have been doing a lot. on this
Yeah,
through the last few weeks.
Back around November, we kind of got a surprise from our telephone voice provider. They partnered with MyTel, who has their voice over IP or telephone solution, and MyTel has since gotten out of business. So we kind of were blindsided with this to try to come up with a new solution without any money budget, plan in place. We have until June to get something put in place. So we've been kind of scrambling trying to take care of that. MyTel, from what I've been told, has sold their business to another company, and that company is working with Frontier, just like the Frontier worked with MyTel, to get all those customers ported over to them. But of course, that company has its own contract agreements and things of that nature. We've been working diligently with Frontier and all the department heads in town as well, trying to come up with a solution that comes at least at net zero cost of time. Because originally it was going to be astronomically more expensive than we were already paying per month, like almost double. Luckily, with some of the, actually Chief Coalminer's help primarily, he's the biggest one, so thank you, Chief, and all the other department heads, we've been able to reduce some of our current services that won't be needed when we migrate over. So that helped reduce some of that cost. And then negotiating with our Frontier sales rep, we've been able to reduce the cost. Well, come up with a new agreement, which is one of the agreements that's on the agenda tonight, for a 5-year agreement for our fiber optic circuits. And the circuits will save us money as well. So that's also helping reduce some of that cost. And then by reducing that cost, reducing the number of licenses we need for voice over IP, and negotiating with Frontier, we've been able to work that down to a net zero basis. So and the nice thing is the new service will actually be a better service than what we had. It won't be tied to just a desk phone anymore. Each license is tied to a user. We get much better control over the service, how the service is used, reporting features that we've never had before. So, and then on top of that, we get all new desk handsets, which will be about a $52,000 cost, but we get that for free. So we're really hard trying to get this down to zero, and I think we kind of succeeded.
Well,
I mean, it's plus or minus maybe $100. Yeah.
So I recall when this was brought to your attention and the supervisor's attention, it was like a bomb went off.
Yeah, it's,
Nobody saw this coming, and the amount of work that you and John have put into this. Honestly, I didn't think we were gonna get close to net zero.
yeah, I did first.
When the numbers first came out, and I'll tell you, and you kept us surprised every step of the way of the gains that you were making, and you guys did a great job. Congratulations on getting it to net zero. That's a yeoman's job you guys did.
And saying, hopefully with some other projects we got coming down the pipe, we'll be able to actually even reduce some additional costs. But
Yeah.
those will
Fantastic.
come about as we get a little further down the line.
Well, two things. First of all, I certainly want to open up if there are any questions or comments from the board. And after that, John, I'm hoping you can do these two resolutions and add to them at the end and authorize the town supervisor to sign that. I can't do that. So we should add to the end of each of those and authorize the supervisor.
Yeah.
So, Jenny, do you have any questions or comments on this? Bill?
No, I'm very familiar with what Steve told us, and I'm ready to move this forward.
Yeah, you know what Steve didn't tell you? Is that the 30 or so on VoIP my telephones that I had 3 years ago, I brought in to Steve and John, and they took out to all of our employees. What are they worth now?
0.
Thank you. Thank you.
0, they're worth nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't,
Okay,
you can't
yeah.
use only for scrap.
Yeah, I got some good paperweights for people if you want.
So I move that we authorize the supervisor to approve a 3-year contract and sign the contract with Frontier Communications of America for the required migration of voice services.
Second.
Councilman Cahill.
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn.
Aye.
Councilman Abbott.
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty.
Aye.
I would also move to authorize the supervisor to approve and sign a 5-year contract with Frontier Communications of America, Inc. to receive better pricing on internet and Ethernet connections.
Second.
Councilman Cahill.
Aye.
Councilman Abbott.
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn.
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty.
Aye. And then I know, was it Dolly, you floated this out to the board in the last couple of weeks, just to make sure that what their thoughts were on the next resolution. Everybody seems to be okay with this.
Yes.
So any questions or comments by the board?
No.
Okay. I make a motion to waive the New York State Liquor Authority on-premises alcoholic beverage license 30-day notification period required for American Multi-Cinema Inc., located at 2190 Empire Boulevard, Webster, New York.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty.
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn.
Aye.
Councilman Cahill.
Aye.
Councilman Abbott.
Aye.
I don't know, I mean, it's AMC Theater, great, you know, but if I'm going to a movie that's popcorn and root beer, I can't have a drink in the movie, I'll fall asleep. Anyway, you know, it's funny, I'm not sure, I should have looked closer at this, there was no reason, why we didn't have the two individuals' names on this agenda. I guess there was. Right up until about 1 o'clock today, Josh Artuzo was trying to get confirmation from one of the applicants, and I guess the emails have been going into the person's junk mail, but he did get back to Josh today and said, yes, I'm thrilled that you want to put me on as a alternate. So I want to, the two alternate positions on the Zoning Board of Appeals. One of the gentlemen's name is Christopher Santola, and the other gentleman's name is Michael Short. I want to open this up to any questions, comments that the board has before we make a motion to appoint these alternate members. But just a real quick, I guess we did an alternate back in 18 or 19, Bill.
Yes.
And, you know, you learn from experience. I don't think there was some good bandwidth of parameters put on what the duties were of the alternate. And that ambiguity, I think, led to the board it didn't work with the board with that alternate. The alternate didn't feel like it worked with him, and it went away. So we learned from that, and we said, well, let's do this. We're going to have an alternate position essentially be exactly the same job duties. Exactly the same job as somebody who is a full zoning board of appeals member. Board member. Now, there's 5 board members on that zoning board of appeals. So unlike the planning board, who has 7 board members, if one of them can't make it to the meeting, that's a problematic situation when you're voting on certain things. So that was what kind of drove the bus of why we wanted alternates, so that if somebody couldn't make it for whatever reason, you could slide the alternate. What ended up happening through this process is that 2 excellent candidates manifested themselves. So Jamie Newtown, who is the chair of the zoning board, and Josh Artuzo approached me and said, what do you think about us appointing both of these alternates? And we talked to Paul about, there's a budget aspect to this. I mean, because they have the exact duties and the exact pay as a zoning board member, I don't know, is it $1,800 a year to a zoning board member?
Yeah, that's probably about right.
Right.
No,
So it is a $3,600 unbudgeted thing for 2023. Well, we're 2 months into it, so it won't be that much. But Paul said through budget transfers or whatever, we cover that. And that basically is where we got to this point. So I know that the board has gotten resumes on these gentlemen, trying to keep them apprised of the process. Do you have any questions or comments before we move to?
Yeah.
Well, then I make a motion to appoint Christopher A. Santola and Michael E. Short as alternate members to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilwoman Lynn?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Evans?
Aye.
The next one's well, it's easier, but it's, I don't know. Bill, you are the liaison to the Assessment Review Board. And I take it you know Charlie Stiles?
I've known Charlie for a while, yes.
Yeah.
He's not in good health,
He's not.
and
And,
we need to replace him on the board of assessment review. The individual we've chosen has been on the board before, is very familiar with what goes on with that board, and we asked her if she'd be willing to fill out his term, the remaining portion of his term, and that individual said she was. So that's why we're presenting her for Sarah Nowak. I would move that we would appoint Sarah Nowak to fill out the remaining term of Charlie Stiles on the Board of Assessment Review.
Second.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye?
Councilwoman Lynn?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
The only thing I would add to that would be to thank Charlie Stiles for his service to the town. He's been very active not only in the town but also in the village. I've known Charlie since I moved to Webster, and he was 2 houses down, and was quite involved in getting me into politics. He's a good man and a good neighbor. Both he and his wife Martha and their family, just wonderful.
John, at the risk of, I don't want to say, I don't think I'm breaking confidentiality on this, but Charlie Stiles, a couple weeks ago, called from the hospital to my office, said, I really need to talk to you. So I called him back, and I've met him a couple of times. He is a cool guy. And they don't make people like this anymore. He is sitting there saying, I can't apologize to you enough, Supervisor Flaherty. I'm like, you can call me Tom, Charlie. I mean, you're my elder, but I should give you a formal resignation letter, but I'm in the hospital and I just don't have the means to do that. So I'm embarrassed by this, but I have to do it over the phone. And I'm like, where does a guy like that? That's the greatest generation, isn't it?
Absolutely. A lot of doubt.
You need to not worry, give that one more thought. Get better, focus on your health. Do not feel bad about that. That just speaks volumes about the guy.
he served his community in many, many capacities, including, I believe he was president of the school at one point, I think he was on the coach board. But that's the type of individual that he is. You know, he dedicates a lot of his life and family time to the community, and you don't see that very much anymore. To say nothing of, I know he was a great mentor to me from a political standpoint, but also a life lesson standpoint. I can't even tell you how many conversations that I've had with Charlie, sitting with him in his driveway in the last 12 years. I mean, he's just the type of guy that you sit down and his life experience he has so many stories. And you're listening and you're learning at the same time. And you just don't see that anymore.
Well, he takes conscientiousness to a level that I don't think I'll ever have.
I would say too, he was also, I think some inconvenience in his part, but he also stood up and was chair of the zoning, not the zoning, the assessment board review for a number of years. And that's extra work,
Right.
and he took it on even though he had some physical ailments to deal with. But he did it voluntarily and did a great job. So.
Very smart man.
Our last item tonight is housekeeping. Does the board have any questions on this recycling 2 items from the sewer department? And I make a motion to declare the following items for recycling from the sewer department. A sewer treatment plant pole barn, asset number 925068, taken down in 2019, actually, doing housekeeping. And Stony Point lift station panel, asset number 2124.
Second. Supervisor Flaherty.
Aye.
Councilwoman Lynn.
Aye.
Councilman Cahill.
Right.
Councilman Abbott.
Aye.
All right, well, that concludes our meeting tonight. We'll do a quick round table and hopefully get you home early. Steve, you're at the table, so you gotta start.
I gotta start?
Yeah, got anything to?
Actually, I do want to thank John Camille and Andy Chancellor for working in the Hatchie department with during the time of the frontier conversion, plus still trying to get everything else that we got going on. So they've been working very diligently trying to keep up with the flow while I've been fighting the frontier.
Gotcha. Paul?
Well, I completed the annual reconciliation of the town's capital projects today. We take a look at each individual project, and we're up to, currently have about 20 projects that are either been completed and we're waiting for funding to come in, like from grants, whether in the planning stage or they're in the midst of actually being constructed. So, about 20. We had 22 last year. There's also the recreation center is holding a pickleball tournament this weekend on Saturday. There's a morning session and an afternoon session. I'll be playing in the afternoon session. They call me the comeback kid.
I hear you're good.
The comeback kid. Pickleball Paul.
How do you want to follow that, Bill?
You don't,
No, you know.
I will say that my health does not allow me to play pickleball, but I would love to have tried it.
You've lost some weight in the last couple of years. You might be
Well,
out
I got
there.
2 mechanical knees.
Well, I have to know.
I recommend play pickleball or tennis with 2
Well, you can follow that, Charlie.
Well, I'd like to say that we finally transferred the remaining part of the Bolter Field property. It's done, it's completed, and it now is completely one parking lot and stadium by the school district. So,
Hey, Ginny.
Well, again, please come out and support the Webster Public Library and the museum. This year they have many phenomenal events, fun for family, things like that. You can check it out on the website. Karen Fox has done a wonderful job. Posted online, so come out and support our community.
Thanks, Ginny. And John?
I just want to thank Tom for the meeting we had this afternoon. Actually, it was this morning. Without getting into details, I thought it was a good meeting as we continue our due diligence with regard to the ambulance. So hopefully we'll be giving you a more detailed update soon.
Well, I can give you detail about the meeting. 9:30 this morning, this guy, he heats up like a porterhouse steak and eats it at the table. It's unbelievable.
I'm not guaranteed it.
But
I'm not guaranteed
I
it.
couldn't believe it.
that'll be your meeting next, everyone.
Hi, you want to follow that, Bobby?
I'm not sure this year.
Come on. Well, guess what?
Actually, I do have to correct you on one thing. It wasn't a porterhouse. It was certified Angus sirloin, purchased at Morgan's Grocery in Penn, New York.
It was a good-looking piece of beef, I'll tell you that.
And Paul is well aware of their beef, right?
Pickleball Paul.
Yeah.
Of course.
Shots and Morgan's in Penn.
With that in mind, we are adjourned.
I remember.
I did have to say,
Oh, you know what? Because I looked at it and I wait a minute. Well, thanks for coming. Wait a minute. Dan, you're at the green end?
Not green, I was talking about
These.
because I'm not really too big on green.
Well, you want to talk about EVs and you're going to go talk to John over there. He too will be kindred soul. Mr. Truer.
Return service.
Not really.
It's all the green. 2 years and,